During the reading of my father's will, my brother chuckled and remarked, "I already took the money and spent it, so good luck." The lawyer offered a subtle smile and slid a folder across the table. "Actually, you might want to take a look at this first." My brother's grin faded as he opened the first page. I sensed something was amiss the moment I entered the law office. The atmosphere felt thick, as if a storm were brewing. I settled into the long mahogany table, my hands tightly clasped in my lap. My father's will was about to be revealed, and although I didn't expect much, our relationship had always been complicated. I was present out of respect. My brother Brian was already lounging across from me, looking as if he had just hit the jackpot. He sported an expensive watch, a tailored suit, and shoes that gleamed. That was my first indication. Brian had never had money. He never dressed like this. The lawyer, Mr. Adams, cleared his throat. "Thank you for being here. As you know, Mr. Thompson's passing has necessitated the distribution of his estate according to his wishes. Before we start, are there any questions?" I remained silent. Brian smirked. "Nah, no questions. Let's just get on with it." I narrowed my gaze. Something felt off. Mr. Adams shuffled through some documents and began to read. My father had left a considerable sum of money, properties, and assets to be shared between me and Brian. But as he continued, I noticed something odd. Brian was grinning. Then came the shocking revelation. The inheritance, which was held in trust, had already been distributed to Brian 6 months before Mr. Thompson's death at his request. My stomach dropped. "What?" Brian erupted in laughter. "Oh man, I was waiting for you to find out." He pretended to wipe a tear from his eye. "Yeah, I already got the money and spent it. So good luck getting anything." I could only stare at him, my blood running cold. Mr. Adams, however, remained unfazed. If anything, he seemed amused. That's when he did something I'll never forget. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table toward Brian. "Actually," he said calmly, "you might want to read this first." The smirk disappeared from Brian's face as he opened the folder and scanned the first page. His complexion drained of color. What is this?" he stuttered. Mr. Adams simply adjusted his glasses. "That, Mr. Brian, is what we in the legal field refer to as a trap." I was clueless about what was happening, but I relished watching Brian's smug expression crumble. He flipped through the pages, his hand beginning to tremble. This can't be real." "Oh, it's very real, Mr. Brian," Mr. Adams replied, leaning back in his chair. "You see, Mr. Thompson was no fool. He suspected you might try to manipulate him, so he devised something quite clever." I leaned forward. "What are you talking about?" Mr. Adams turned to me, a slight smile on his lips. "Your father was aware that Brian intended to access his money early, so he created a dummy inheritance, a fake trust with stipulations that Brian never bothered to read. That trust wasn't part of the actual will, it was a test." I blinked in confusion. "A test?" Brian was visibly trembling now. This is... Mr. Adams ignored him. "Yes, your father wanted to see if Brian would attempt to take the money prematurely. If he did, it would activate a clause that disinherited him from the real estate and assets." A slow, cold smile began to spread across my face. "So you're saying the money he took wasn't even the real inheritance?" Mr. Adams nodded in affirmation. Brian shot up from his chair, fists clenched in anger. "You're lying." I spent it all. The houses, the cars, I invested it. You can't just..." Mr. Adams calmly slid another document across the table. "Actually, we can. That's a court order freezing all remaining assets tied to the fraudulent trust." Brian fell silent, and then he screamed. I had never witnessed a grown man unravel so quickly. Brian began to pace, running his hands through his hair. This isn't happening. This isn't happening." Mr. Adams sighed. "Oh, it's happening. And it gets worse." Brian snapped his head up. "Worse." Mr. Adams flipped to the next page and tapped it with his pen. "Your father anticipated you would squander the money, so he left specific instructions. You are now legally obligated to repay every cent you took." Brian slumped back into his chair, breathing heavily. I can't. There's nothing left." "That's unfortunate," Mr. Adams replied, showing no sympathy. Because the law firm is ready to pursue this matter to the fullest extent. Your father ensured that would happen. Brian's jaw tightened. You can't get blood from a stone. Mr. Adams raised an eyebrow. You can if the stone committed fraud. I could hardly contain my excitement. My father had set him up perfectly. Brian had deceived my father into giving him the money early, only to discover it was a test, and now he owed every penny back. I didn't even have to lift a finger. He had trapped himself. Brian's breathing became erratic. I have a house, a car. But Mr. Adams raised a hand to silence him. Not anymore. Brian froze in place. Mr. Adams wore a tight-lipped smile. All assets acquired with that money will be liquidated to settle the debt. You won't have a single dime left. Brian sat there, utterly defeated, his hands shaking as he grasped the reality of the situation. And me? I simply leaned back and watched. This was the best day of my life. I was witnessing Brian's world crumble before my eyes. His face was ashen, his breathing erratic. Here was a man who believed he had it all, only to discover he was the punchline to the cruelest joke imaginable, and the best part? He had done it to himself. Mr. Adams began to gather his papers, unfazed by the breakdown occurring across the table. We will, of course, allow you time to review the documents with your own legal counsel, he stated. However, I would advise against delaying. The court orders take effect immediately. Brian swallowed hard, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. No. This is fraud. He pointed a finger at me. He's setting me up. This can't be real. I let out a small laugh. Oh, it's very real. Brian leaped from his chair so quickly that it nearly toppled over. I'll fight this. I'll sue. This is a scam. You can't just take my money. Mr. Adams regarded him with a weary expression. It was never your money, Mr. Brian. It was a trust you misappropriated from your own father, and now you're facing the repercussions. I anticipated Brian to explode, perhaps flip the table or start shouting. But instead, he did something even more unsettling. He smiled. A slow, twisted grin spread across his face. You think I'm just going to let this happen? He said softly. You think I don't have options? I tensed up. Mr. Adams remained composed, but I noticed his fingers tightening slightly around his briefcase. Brian leaned in closer, lowering his voice. Let me make this clear. You call this off, and I'll ensure nothing bad happens. Silence hung in the air. Then Mr. Adams exhaled. Threats. He shook his head, unimpressed. That's always the last resort of a desperate man. Brian's grin faded. Mr. Adams fixed him with a pointed look. I suggest you reconsider your words, Mr. Brian. Because if you think you're in trouble now, just wait until the law gets involved. Brian slumped back into his chair, his face contorted with rage. That's when Mr. Adams turned to me. There's one more thing, he said. The second trap. Brian groaned, slumping in his seat. Oh, what now? What else could you possibly take from me? Mr. Adams didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out another folder and handed it to me. This, he said, is something your father wanted you to have personally. I frowned. What is it? Read. I opened the folder, and my heart sank. The first page contained undeniable proof. Bank statements, forged signatures, years of embezzled funds, and Brian's name was all over it. I looked up in shock. This is... Yes, Mr. Adams confirmed. This isn't just about the trust or the money he squandered in the last 6 months. Brian has been stealing from your father for years. I could hear Brian's breathing grow more labored. His foot was tapping frantically under the table. You're lying, he spat through gritted teeth. No. I flipped through the pages. Yes. Loan applications in my father's name, withdrawals from hidden accounts, even a forged sale of one of his properties. Brian wasn't just a greedy fool. He was a criminal. Mr. Adams turned to him. Your father chose not to press charges while he was alive, but after his death, he instructed us to take action. Brian looked as if he might be sick. I closed the folder, my mind racing. So what happens now? Mr. Adams sighed. Well, that depends. He turned back to Brian. If you cooperate, we might be able to resolve this civilly. But if you resist, if you try anything, then we will pursue full legal action, including criminal charges." Brian's mouth opened and then closed again. He was cornered, and he knew it. I thought that would be the end of it. But then Brian did something I never expected. 3 days later, Brian vanished. He was gone. No calls, no emails, no trace of him anywhere. At first, I assumed he had gone into hiding, trying to postpone the inevitable. But then I received a call from Mr. Adams. "We have a problem," he said, and my stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves fraudulent passports and an attempt to flee the country." I sat up straight. "You're kidding." "I wish I were," Mr. Adams sighed. "Brian bought a one-way ticket to Argentina. He's trying to escape." A slow burn of anger ignited in my chest. "Oh hell no. Did he make it?" There was a pause, then Mr. Adams chuckled. "No, he got caught at the airport." I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. Brian was arrested at the airport with a fake passport, a suitcase full of cash, and a very expensive watch he had forgotten wasn't technically his anymore. It turns out that attempting to fake your identity while under active investigation for financial crimes is a surefire way to get locked up immediately. Just like that, Brian transformed from a cocky, grinning con artist into a wanted fugitive with no escape route. The court seized everything: the house, the cars, the bank accounts. Even his personal belongings were liquidated to settle his debts. And me? I received exactly what my father intended for me. Everything. Brian didn't go down without a fight. He spent months trying to contest the case, but there was too much evidence, too many paper trails, too many forged signatures, and too many blunders. In the end, the law did what it does best. It caught up with him. Brian was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, theft, and attempted identity fraud. His sentence? 15 years. I visited him once. Just once. He looked different, thinner and paler. The arrogance had vanished, replaced by something hollow and broken. "You happy?" he spat through the glass. I pondered that for a moment. Then I smiled. "Yes." And I walked away. After Brian's conviction, I thought it was all over. I had won. I inherited my father's estate, his money, his business. Brian was rotting in prison, stripped of everything. I believed I was finally free of him, or so I thought. 6 months after Brian's sentencing, I received a letter, not an email, but an actual handwritten note. It was from Brian. I almost tossed it aside, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was brief, and it terrified me. "You think this is over? I have friends. You took everything from me. Now I'm taking something from you." No signature. Just that one chilling sentence. I read it twice, my heart racing. It wasn't just anger. It was a threat. That night, I locked all my doors. At first, nothing happened. Weeks turned into months. I began to think maybe he was just bluffing. Until the break-in. It occurred at 3 a.m. My security system blared, jolting me awake in a panic. Someone was trying to force their way in. By the time the police arrived, the intruder was gone. But they left something behind. A single playing card, a joker, taped to my front door. I rushed to Mr. Adams. "This isn't possible," I said, pacing in his office. "He's in prison." Mr. Adams nodded, looking concerned. "He is. But that doesn't mean he's powerless." Brian had connections. Small-time criminals, shady business partners, people who owed him favors. And now they were coming for you. That's when I made a decision. If Brian wanted a war, I would give him one. I hired a private investigator. If Brian had people on the outside working for him, I needed to identify them. The PI, a man named Henderson, was skilled. 2 weeks later, he returned with names. Brian had 3 key individuals still handling his dirty work. Victor Cole, a former accountant who assisted him in laundering stolen money. Ray Bones Martinez, an enforcer, violent and someone you definitely didn't want knocking on your door. Samantha Price, an ex-girlfriend, clever and dangerous, the true mastermind behind Brian's last-minute schemes. Henderson leaned back in his chair. These people, they're not easily intimidated, and they don't back down. I clenched my fists. Neither do I. I needed to do what my father had done to Brian, set a trap. So I baited them. I made it appear as though I was about to transfer all the estate's liquid assets into a single vulnerable account. It was a ruse, of course, but I ensured the right people caught wind of it. It worked. 3 days later, Samantha Price showed up at my bank. She attempted to withdraw money using forged documents. Little did she know that the account was flagged and that the bank manager was already collaborating with the police. The moment she handed over the fake paperwork, the alarms blared. She was arrested on the spot. Samantha cracked quickly, facing multiple felonies. She turned on everyone. Victor Cole was apprehended for fraud and tax evasion. Ray Bones Martinez was caught with illegal weapons and had outstanding warrants. And the best part? Brian had been orchestrating everything from prison using a smuggled phone. When investigators searched his cell, they discovered written plans for targeting my accounts, my house, and even my family. That was the final nail in his coffin. Brian's original 15-year sentence was extended to 35 years, with no chance of parole. I didn't visit him this time, but I sent him a letter. It was short and straightforward, checkmate. I never heard from him again, but I knew that somewhere in that prison, he read that letter and realized I had destroyed him for good. Brian was finished. His scam had crumbled. His allies had either been arrested or turned against him. His sentence was doubled, ensuring he would spend the rest of his prime years rotting behind bars. I should have felt relief, but I wasn't done yet. Even after everything, Brian was still trying to fight back from prison. He hired a lawyer, a sleazy high-priced attorney who specialized in getting criminals off the hook. Brian was desperate. He had nothing left to lose. His lawyer sent me a letter demanding a settlement. A settlement. The man who had stolen from my father, squandered my inheritance, and tried to ruin me was now begging for money. I laughed so hard I nearly toppled out of my chair. Then I got to work. I hired my own lawyer, the best one money could buy, and I didn't just defend myself. I countersued for damages, emotional distress, and every last cent he attempted to take. The case moved quickly. The judge took one look at Brian's history and dismissed his case outright. My countersuit was approved. The court ruled that everything Brian had left, his personal belongings, his prison wages, any future inheritance, would go to me. Every dollar he would ever earn would be mine. Even from behind bars, he would be working for me. I sent him one final letter. It was straightforward. Now you work for me. Enjoy the next 35 years. No threats, no insults. Just the cold, hard truth. I never received a response, but I could picture Brian sitting in his cramped prison cell, reading those words over and over, realizing he had lost everything. Brian used to believe that money equated to power. He thought that with enough of it, he could lie, cheat, and steal his way through life. But in the end, the law caught up with him. Karma caught up with him. And I made sure he paid for every ounce of his greed. For the first time in my life, I felt free. And Brian? He was exactly where he belonged. What would you have done in my shoes? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.